When Luke and I married 18 years ago, we purchased a beautiful old home on Boone Street. It's the place where I started my blog. We brought home our first 3 babies. I birthed 2 babies there. It had a small backyard that my garden took up half of. We had some backyard chickens. I learned how to bake bread there, to can and ferment. We always dreamed of having a home in the country. 10 years after living there, we found an adorable little homestead with an old house, and we loved that place. In April of 2024, we found a property that we knew would be perfect for our large growing family, complete with a live creek and beautiful views. Though I love the charm and character of an old house, we knew this property was where we should live. So we worked on designing a new old house. In this video, I'm going to be sharing a build update, some things I've learned through this process, and how you can add old world style to your new build. Here in our downstairs primary bedroom, we have the Windsor 1 tongue and groove V-groove board, and most of that is on. Now in this room we'll also have beadboard on the ceiling. We opted to do drywall underneath the beadboard just for fire safety. That way if there were to be a fire, it would take longer to spread to the upstairs. Here's the view from our room to the stone garage. I just love that. And then here in our bathroom, we did finally get our windows. I'm gonna have to put some curtains up, obviously, but I'm just really excited about the idea of sitting in the bathtub underneath these windows, looking out at the stone barn with a candle on the windowsill, a linen curtain flapping in the breeze. It all just sounds so lovely. Got our back door installed. Now this door came from a farmhouse that we tore down on a farm my parents have, and we need to clean it up, do some work to it, but I'm so excited to see it in place. And then above it, we got in a transom window that is operable, and so I ordered some hardware that we can actually operate this. It'll look old. And then after you come into this mud hall where there'll be cabinetry here, there's a matching door from that same farm, and then a transom window above it that will also be operable. So it'll kind of be like a neat little hall that will look like an addition. We're trying to dry this house out while finishing construction, so we brought in our Thornhill range cooker and just temporarily set it up. We've been lighting that every day. I can't wait to be baking bread in this thing and cooking on it all throughout the winter months. Now we do have another range that will be our, for summer, but I imagine in the winter that we'll have both of them going. We also got the casement windows in place here in the sunroom, and I am so excited about this space. This is probably my most favorite space in the home, second to the kitchen, but this is right off the kitchen, so I see it as an extension of that. Here in the living room, we also have the Windsor 1 tongue and groove V-groove board. That's just going to be in these 2 rooms, and the rest will have beadboard. This will also have a beadboard ceiling. We also did get the wood stove going in this room to dry everything out, but it's temporarily installed. It will actually be set in the corner with a hearth pad, of course, underneath of it. Not much has changed here on the second floor except for insulation everywhere, and then also we've placed the doors so that we can make sure they're going to fit in all the spots. So this is the door for the closet in this room, and then this one goes to the closet in here. I'm really excited about this double door. Has a little center thing as well. It will be for this closet under the stairs. And here's the door for this closet and for this closet as well. The only changes on the second floor were the insulation and then placing some of the doors. The third floor is very exciting because we now have the dormer windows and the gable end windows. So here on the gable ends, we have these little, I think they're called quarter round windows, something like that. But they're basically like a quarter of a circle. They're commonly seen in historic homes, so that's why we decided to do those here. From 100-year window, and then we also have the dormer windows from 100-year window that are casement windows, so they open out, which I think is just so charming. Got a little view from up here of the garage and the stone. Here's the view from the gable windows on this side, but the other side is where I really love it. There's that barn. These windows here in the pantry I'm excited about. So we're gonna put a little eating area out here. I've been dreaming about this ever since. Now the windows are finally in. I can actually picture what it would be like to open these windows and maybe like send food out that way. I don't know if we'll ever really do it, but it sure sounds exciting. Out here in the garage loft, we installed the Dutch door that is supposed to look like this is a hay loft. That's how we're making the whole barn thing convincing. We will eventually be painting it, but for right now, it's too cold. So it's staying primed for probably the winter. We are busy with a new house build. Of course, there's always so much that goes into caring for a home with 11 people. There's a lot of messes and a lot of cleaning going on. And lately, it seems like everything has unnecessary chemicals. And when I started looking at the items around the home that can be used to clean, I noticed that laundry detergent is actually the biggest offender. That's when I found Earth Breeze. Their detergent sheets are free of harsh chemicals like optical brighteners, dyes, parabens, phosphates, and preservatives. No heavy plastic jugs, no mess, no harsh chemical residue. Just a lightweight, pre-measured sheet that dissolves in the wash and gets the job done. And yes, your clothes still come out clean, fresh, and soft. And the craziest part, these chemicals don't even clean your clothes. They just trick your eyes into thinking your clothes are whiter and brighter than they really are. You can actually see them under a black light, and it's pretty gross. I don't want that stuff around my home and my family. With Earth Breeze, I feel so much better knowing I'm not exposing us to all those unnecessary chemicals. If you want a powerful clean without the harsh chemicals, try Earth Breeze. It's easy to switch, and if you're not completely satisfied, they have an amazing money back guarantee. Right now, you can try Earth Breeze for up to 40% off plus 4 free gifts with my link down in the description box below. Again, thank you so much, Earth Breeze, for sponsoring today's video. The updates for this house at this point truly feel like a moving target because every day there's something new. We are in the home stretch. Trying to figure out at this point when to have the floors there so they're not in the way, but that they're there in time, when to have the cabinets there, same thing, plumbing fixtures, all the things in a timely sequence. I wanted to share with you some lessons I've learned about doing a new old house build, and then some tips for you if you are going to be doing a build or if you want to add some charm and character to a new build or a cookie cutter type of house. I'm going to share with you some of the things that I feel like made the biggest difference for us. So first, on the lessons learned part, and really this isn't a lesson I had to learn the hard way because I feel like we did it right, but I could see how it could maybe not have turned out in the best way if we'd gone a different route. So that is in choosing a builder. So when we were in the research phase of this project, I was consulting with Brent Hall to try to nail down a story, a design. I asked him, who should I go with as a builder? And I submitted to him like 3 or 4 different builders in our area. Now Brent lives down in Texas, so he could only figure out a little bit about these builders from websites or reviews, things like that. And one of the builders he pointed out was probably too much of a production builder who's very in their process. So they have a certain way that they do things. They probably have things all lined up, very organized, but maybe too set in their ways for a project like we are doing. Because there are a lot of things that even our builders, you know, when we suggest that we're going to do a certain thing, they're like, okay, but we'll do it, but okay, normally people choose this, you know, but it was always something that was quite flexible with our builders. They were willing to go through this process with us, as opposed to just saying, no, that's not how we do things. This is what we're going to do. And I really appreciated that because I had a lot of things that I wanted to do very differently from the way builds are done today. And I needed somebody who would work with me on that. Obviously, the other option is to general contract it yourself. Now, there's a lot to know about that. I am just mind blown with how much there is to know about a build. Now, I'm learning along the way because there's certain things that they come up and I'm like, oh yes, we need to think about that. But there are things that people who've been building a long time are aware of. The type of person you want to find is somebody who will go on this journey with you, but also very knowledgeable about builds and what all needs to happen. I think the way that you could figure this out is to take your plans and show them all the things on the plan that you actually want to do. If I were meeting with a builder trying to embark on this project, I would say, okay, let's sit down and talk about these plans. I'm going to walk you through each little thing on here and explain how this might be a little bit more challenging, or take a little creativity too. Like, I'm sure probably all builders have enough skill to be able to adapt. But that's one thing I've noticed about our builders. When it came down to even the barn loft, they were able to come up with a door for where the hay would go in. We didn't really have a drawing for that. And what materials to use and where to find the flooring for that and for the railing. And then up in the house, there have been so many things that the plans are one, but then out in the field, something comes up that makes it difficult or challenging. And they've been able to come up with ideas all along the way and notice those problems. Just a really small example, the way that the wood stove is installed, they noticed that it'd be really hard to clean it out. And so they put a little door made out of the wall material so that Luke can actually get in and get the ashes out from where it falls down on the elbow. There have been so many little things like that, and I anticipate now that we're inside, there'll be a lot more that they've been able to come up with a solution for. And that kind of creativity, craftsmanship is something that I would want to really quiz them. If I were meeting with a builder, I want to ask them, what are some unusual projects you've done? Have you ever worked with a certain material? Maybe some of the things you're concerned about. Just bring it up right from the beginning, so that way when you get to that spot, it's not like a, oh no, we're not really willing to put in all the time for that detail. Make sure that up front they know that even if this takes longer, we're going to go through with this plan. Even if it's harder to source things, we're waiting for weeks at a time, this is what it's going to look like. So if you need to move on to another project and you can't do projects in the meantime while we're waiting for this certain thing, just make sure that they know that it's going to be a bit unique. The next lesson kind of goes in that same direction. This will take longer than a standard build. And when I say a standard build, I just mean one that you can get all of the materials at the local lumber yard. You're not having to source them. Reclaimed items aren't going to be part of the picture. Painting a lot of wood. There's just so many little steps along the way when you're trying to make a house that looks old that will take more time because things aren't readily available. They have to be custom made, custom built. They take a lot of elbow grease, a lot of sourcing. And so you shouldn't compare that timeline. Because I remember when we were first starting on this, I was just so anxious to get into our house. I'm still anxious to get in our house because we're still not there. I was like, okay, we moved in here in this house in November. By next Christmas, we're going to be in that house. And I was Googling, like, how long does a new house build take? And people were like, well, it can take as little as 5 or 6 months. See those kind of timelines, and you have to realize if you're trying to find Facebook Marketplace bathroom sink and get reclaimed doors and hardware for the interior doors, maybe some unfitted kitchen cabinets and things, that it's going to take a while. One of the concepts on our build that took a little bit longer, planning and scratching our heads and math and so much back and forth, was this enclosed porch idea. We wanted our old house to have a story. So at some point in history, there was a front porch and a back porch. They mirror imaged each other, and then they needed more space. And so they windowed in the back porch and added a whole bunch of rooms that were going to serve them and their family better in modern times. So that's the kind of story that we were trying to craft with the old house, because a lot of times old houses do have different additions along the way. You walk in and you're like, oh, what happened here? Like in our last house, a friend of mine who's an old house lover came in and she said, oh, you can see they took this staircase out here. So this bathroom here, that was actually a porch. They entered in, went up the staircase, and then you can tell upstairs the way that this room and the flooring is, that this is where a staircase went, and then maybe it was like a servant's quarters or something. And the pantry was where a staircase went up once they took that staircase out, because they no longer had servants, they no longer needed that separate entrance. They added a pantry there. So old houses just naturally have that because they have been lived in for so long. So many different people use them in different ways and had different needs. And so they adapt them and change them. And so trying to create some of that quirkiness, some of that story up front was something that was really important to me because I wanted it to feel truly authentic. And this back porch thing is going to look beautiful, but it was a head scratcher. Figuring out the sizes of the windows, figuring out where to put the walls in between each room was definitely a challenge. There was times throughout this process where I said, I wish we would have never done this enclosed back porch thing. Like, I don't see how this could ever be worth it. Now, of course, now that we're on the other side of it, I stand in the room and I see the beautiful views from the windows and all of this, and then from the outside how it looks so symmetrical, and it looks like it does have a story of at some point in history these matching porches because of the way the roof lines all match and line up. It's all beautiful. I think it makes it look authentically old, but it was not easy. There was so much that went into putting that narrative together. Like, for example, a lot of the interior walls, like the ones that separate the guest bath from the closet, the walls had to hit where there was a window mullion. And I really feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong, but we're gonna go with it. So there's the part that divides the windows. So they have to be smaller walls to line up with that. And the tricky part of that is the whole house has to be framed before figuring out exactly what size windows will be fit in. And thankfully, because of so much head scratching, so much back and forth between 100-year window and between my builder and me throwing my brain in there, we were able to figure it out so that when the windows came, they fit in perfectly. All the walls lined up with the mullions. I was so afraid that when the windows got there, we were going to have to move some walls that would have already had plumbing and electric because all that came before the windows. And so I was really afraid that, like, what if we didn't do our math right? That whole concept, though it looks really simple right now and it looks, in my opinion, so beautiful, and I'm so excited to, in my laundry room, have these 2 big windows, and in my bathroom to be sitting underneath a window with a windowsill that I can open out. Love it all. But it did take a lot of head scratching that made this process take so much longer. But my motto throughout this whole thing, we plan to only do this once. We have an idea. We think it's beautiful on paper. And so if something takes longer, we're just going to go with it. So I've kind of taken that motto throughout. Like, for example, the flooring on the 2 porches, actually all 3 porches are going, and I say porches because the back porch and the sun porch are actually, they're not really porches. They were once porches, but now they're not. They're all going to have linseed oil painted floors. That's not something that's necessarily hard to source. It's hard to figure out when you can paint them so that people don't walk on them. It would be just a lot easier to install the same flooring that we install throughout the entire rest of the house and then just have it be all sanded and finished at one time. But I'm pretty committed to this new old house thing, and we're going to do the extra work and sourcing to make it happen. That's my lesson, is just, it's going to take longer, and maybe way longer. Depending on how long you've collected items beforehand, it could just be a project you work on for 5 or 10 years. I started collecting architectural salvage items, not last summer, but the summer before. And that would be one of my recommendations, is to, if you're planning to do this project in the future, and make sure you're actually planning to, because I think sometimes we clutter up our houses and we buy a bunch of stuff for a someday project that we're never actually going to do. But if you really think you're going to do this and you have a plan that in like 3 or 4 years you're going to embark on a project like this, I would start collecting old doors. I would start collecting old door hardware. Start refinishing those doors so that you're not scrambling to get that done last minute. Start looking for light fixtures at antique shops, thrift shops, so that you have time to rewire them. Things like plumbing fixtures, pedestal sinks, clawfoot tubs. If you can neatly organize those items and store them, then you'll more authentically have an old looking collected house. Okay, a few design things that made a big difference. I was trying to make a list of these, and I know that there are things that I've missed. I've tried to share throughout this entire process what has gone into the design and some of the things that we prioritize, so you can head back. I'm actually going to be making a playlist that is all dedicated to this whole process. So when I first shared our plans, I've done lots of updates along the way. A lot of the updates are just kind of within the vlogs, so those will be a little bit tricky to find. But I've made a little list and I'll try to add to this as things come up. But roof pitch is studying the roof pitches and the elevations of the homes that you're trying to recreate. So when we first went into this project, everywhere that we drove, Luke and I were looking at old farmsteads and looking at the details of the houses. So things like the window spacing and sizes, the pitch of the roof, the size of the house compared to the windows and the porches. Those types of things can make a really big difference on if something looks classic, like it has been there forever. Another would be, I don't even know that I really necessarily thought of it this way originally, but it kind of happened naturally because old houses are usually a bit skinnier and added onto as opposed to just really bloated and wide, is most rooms on exterior walls so they have access to light and windows. I imagine that old houses would have been this way because they were made before electricity. So unless they wanted to light a candle all day every day, they needed to utilize the sunlight during the day. So there wouldn't have been a ton of interior rooms that had no light at all. I think about the houses I've lived in, they all have light, bright rooms during the day. This is my third old house that I'm living in right now. All three old houses I've ever lived in never had to turn on lights anywhere during the day. Now, in this new old house that we're building, we did put a couple of bathrooms right in the center upstairs, so those obviously will need lights. But every bedroom, hallway, closet, pantry, everything has access to light and airflow, because back in the day they had to worry about that too. They didn't have an easy way to cool a house, but I think that's why they're so naturally beautiful. It was designed with practicality in mind, but then also obviously light's beautiful and having airflow is all charming. Another design thing that I think makes a big difference is how you do the foundation. I was very adamant that the house did not stick really far out of the ground just to have a walkout or to have windows in the basement, because to me that would take away from it looking historic. Now, we wanted it to look as if the house was on brick piers. So we poured the regular foundation, but then the porches, which cover up most of the foundation because they're on three sides, the side porch and the back porch have a crawl space under them, but then we added like a concrete pillar that we wrapped with brick around all of them and even the front porch. So that way you don't see a ton of this concrete basement, because that wouldn't have been available back in 1900. Another thing that I feel like has an old house feel but also a really country house feel is having an exit off of the kitchen. But the old houses I've lived in, like I said, they don't have really tall basements and walkouts, so it's not a lot of steps down, but also there's usually a door in order to easily leave the kitchen, which I love. I love an indoor-outdoor feel. I want a quick and easy way to get out of my kitchen. I don't want a ton of steps. I don't want to have to go down a lot of hallways or anything. I love that feeling like I'm almost outside with the way the windows and the doors and the steps all are. And sorry about my light. My room I'm in is so sunny, speaking of old houses having so many windows, and so I have to continually change my light here as clouds go by. Another design element that was important to me was the interior lighting, and to not go overboard with lighting. In some ways I think I might have done it anyways, but we avoided recessed lighting. We tried to remember that if light was added to an old house, it was retroactively added, and so they usually didn't go overboard with the lights. And so trying to find the balance between having plenty of light so we can get things done, but also having it look beautiful was the balance we were trying to strike. I'll let you know if we did an okay job with it. We also are doing a lot of beadboard ceilings, so I didn't want them to have tons of little spots where there's holes in them with all the different lighting. So the place we put the most lighting was definitely in the kitchen. I decided that if I feel like we've done too much lighting in any area, I found online, I searched colonial one light candelabra sconce, and it's a very subtle, just like singular candelabra bulb. So if there's a spot where I feel like, oh, we have way too many sconces, we'll just throw those up there, and that way it'll take care of that, you know, electrical spot, but then also not be very bulky. I mentioned the beadboard. That's another design decision that was really important to me, was adding a ton of shiplap, V-groove board, beadboard. We got all of this from Windsor One, and I think it's going to really help the look. My friend Anne from Storied Interiors is coming on Thursday, and she is going to help me figure out the colors throughout the home. I love her style. She helped me pick out the kitchen cabinet color already, as well as the pantry cabinets. So now I'm gonna just pick her brain, because by the end of next week, I'm hoping that we have all of the colors decided. I want to think outside of the box a little bit to further create that historic narrative with the colors. I'm trying not to just get into my usual rut of the colors that I choose, and I think that Anne can help with that. I want it to feel cozy, collected, lots of colors. I think will also sell the historic narrative. So if you have a cookie cutter type of house, that's one way where I really think you can really make a difference is with the colors you choose. So more on that coming soon. Ceiling height, if you want to go with a very early house, they usually have low ceilings and have more of like a timber frame with all the beams. But then for the turn of the century style, we're going for around 1900 for our home. Taller ceilings. So between like 9 and 10, typically we're doing 9'6" downstairs and 9 foot upstairs. Trim around the windows, baseboards, crown molding, cased openings, closed concept. I think that's important to have lots of cozy little rooms that you can decorate. I'm really excited to do that. Using pocket doors to separate rooms off, even if it is more of an open concept, but it gives you a little bit of flexibility there. Also on the exterior, I noticed that when I search farmhouse plans or new old house plans, they have just a lot of gables, like unnecessary gables where the roof line ends like this and then there's another little gable. Trying to go with a more classic, historic, simple design is going to make the process a bit easier. So use historic properties as a guide. I have been studying historic properties like crazy. Distance between house and barn, for example. Our place was raw land. We were still living at our old house. The distance between the house and the barn. And then we tried to do that any place that we could gather a distance around about to figure out, okay, how far did they, in an old homestead, did they put the house from the barn? But we wanted to study those types of proportions, and we thought modeling it after history would make it probably more believable. Not that there's a hard and fast on that, because, you know, there's some people's barns are half a mile away. Some of them are like right next to the house. And we did put our garage pretty close to the house, but we are trying to use as much history as a guide. So some other examples are door hardware, window shapes, sizes, distance from floor, and each other, layouts. There's an Instagram, what's it called? I think it's called Floor Plans of the Past that I looked at a ton. Yes, Floor Plans of the Past. That just kind of shows how a house would have been laid out. So using those kind of things as the guide. Little details on the outside like gable end returns, crown molding, corner boards. I watch Brent Hall here on YouTube and he shares a lot of tips, and he says all these things are usually like 1% things, but they all add up. So you have this 1% thing, this 1% thing, this 1% thing. As a big picture, it makes the whole story believable. Though I've lived in 3 old houses and I've been in a lot of old houses and I drive by old houses, I also looked at real estate listings. I looked at old house Facebook groups to kind of study some details. We had a few details about our house, like the 2 porches that were a little bit tricky, but this can also be done with a very simple design. I have been paying attention to houses when I drive around and on those other places I talked about that just have a very simple design that could totally be recreated. And some of my tips for creating a new old house in the details: architectural salvage. So finding as many old house parts as you can. This can be done retroactively, which is cool. So if you already have a house build or you have a house build coming up and it can't take forever, adding in some things later and swapping things out is something that's also possible. Might be more doable for you in the season of life that you're in. So swapping out a bathroom vanity or a bathtub or hardware, doors, stair parts. Think outside the big box stores. I used Etsy, eBay, architectural salvage, Facebook Marketplace, antique shops. I recently saw a thing on Brooke and Bramble Farm on Instagram where she showed how to do an unfitted kitchen for $2,000, and she showed where she found all these pieces on Facebook Marketplace. Love that look, love that idea, and that's exactly what I'm talking about with thinking unconventionally, thinking outside the box, and piecing together a home where you break all the rules but have a home filled with character. All right, well, I cannot wait to continue to share this process as it unfolds. I really hope that we can move in a couple months. I feel like with us being at the drywall stage, maybe that'll be possible. I'll keep you posted. Lots more updates coming soon.